Welcome back, everybody. It is Inside the Gamecocks, the show, rolling on with our poll du jour. We're going to start taking a look at individual players as we draw closer to the season here. So we will start at one of the more talked about positions, which is the edge opposite of Dylan Stewart. Total sacks for South Carolina's edge, Bryan Thomas Jr. in 2025. Over 4.5, right at 4.5, under 4.5. Why 4.5, you might ask? Because that's what he had last year. He logged 4.5 sacks last year, which is pretty good for old Bryan Thomas Jr. You want to know what I want, JC? I'd love for, by the time Carolina is set to host a playoff game, that we're calling him BTJ. Because if you're calling a guy by some initials, he's probably performing or outperforming expectations.
Yes. Judged on, I did JC in Morgan earlier, and so I haven't been on the site all day on the bigspur.com, but most people think he's going over. Some said by the open date, that's right before they play LSU, so after the first 5 games. Production wise, he was good last year when he played. It's a career high for sacks. He was 3rd on the team behind Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart with sacks. I think he's a good pass rusher. He's undersized. That's a given. But Eric Norwood was undersized here. Someone mentioned Aaron Sterling. I'd forgotten about Aaron Sterling. Good pass rusher.
Yeah.
And then Marcus Howard, who played at Georgia in 2007. Carolina beat Georgia in 2007. And then I think Georgia had lost to Boise State or somebody in the opener too. They went to 0-2. And then they won out. And with 2 losses, they went to the Sugar Bowl. They got to the Sugar Bowl. Yes. What happened in 2007? LSU went to the championship game, so Georgia got the Sugar Bowl. They beat Hawaii. But Marcus Howard was from Hanahan High School in Charleston. Was recruited as a linebacker and just picked Georgia. And you never heard anything about Marcus Howard until he got older, and then he became a defensive end. But he was 6'2", 225. It's like Harold Perkins is like that as an end until LSU tried to make him a linebacker. But it is it's one of those things where I think that that he's going to be the guy. I believe that they think he's going to be very productive, the coaches and all that. And I'm pretty sure he'll start. I'd be shocked if he didn't. And they've got other guys too. Desmond, JT, Demon Clowney, George Wilson, Anthony Addison. I mean, there's a lot of them. So we'll see what happens. But Bryan Thomas Jr. is one of those players. Number one, his dad's Bryan Thomas Sr. that played for the Jets for 10 years. Pretty good player.
Yeah.
Right. 10-year NFL guy. And so he's got bloodlines and he works hard, and he's always been he started 3 games in 2023. And look, I said this on the article today, Phil, that this program has a literal parade under Shane Beamer of guys that in their last year play their best football.
Yeah.
It's a different level. And you can go in the secondary and find that. You can go on the defensive line and find that. I mean, it's just, especially on defense, you've had a lot of players that last year they reached their peak here at the University of South Carolina. So there's no reason to think Bryan Thomas Jr. can't do it. If he falters and is not ideal or somebody beats him out, fine. Mm-hmm. But I don't see that happening. I think he's definitely a guy that they've been pretty confident would start for a while. And you also see his name come up. And another thing about it is people get this confused with Kennard last year. Kennard had 11.5 sacks, right? But, and Kennard did a lot of that himself. I mean, I'm not taking away from Kyle. Kyle had a great year, especially against the run, which is the question, in my opinion, about Bryan Thomas Jr. Can he set the edge like Kyle? He's 17 pounds lighter, to start with, and 3 inches shorter. and you're going up against tackles and stuff. So that's a question. It's a fair question, but people, some of the national media are talking heads. I don't even know if you call them media. I've heard them say, well, Dylan Stewart may not be as good this year because teams aren't focused on Kyle Kennard. Like, if you watch, when teams did focus on one or the other, they focused on Dylan.
Yes,
because Dylan is, that's the guy that's 3 yards in the backfield if you don't get on him. And and you can watch it. Kyle was in the backfield too, but he was more like a yard, right? Yeah. And so Dylan's used to that, and I think that just like, and again, I'm not saying that all of Kyle Kennard's sacks, Phil, were because Dylan Stewart was over there and Kyle's not that good or anything like that. Please don't get me wrong. He had a special season last year at South Carolina, and again, what did he do? Saved his best for last, because he was not that kind of player at Georgia Tech.
No,
he just kind of flashed here and there. So saved his best for last. So, I'm not saying that the only reason Kyle got those sacks and won the Nagurski Award was because Dylan Stewart was over there. I'm just saying that it's not really true when people talk about, well, now they're not as focused on Kyle, to stop Kyle, and so they can easily stop Dylan, because that last year they were focused on Dylan. So it's the same thing. And I think he was ever at that other edge. Thomas Jr. Is the leader in the clubhouse, obviously, to be that guy on August 30th is going to benefit from that, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it only stands to reason, and I think, and like you've said, and we've pointed out many times, I mean, it's Dylan Stewart did not put up huge numbers, right? But that's because early on, from what was on tape in those first few games of this, freshman edge player, that you have to account for a player like that. And Bryan Thomas Jr. was productive in the defense last year and stands to be productive as we move forward into this season. Probably at the top of that depth chart, but there again, I mean, it's not like the Spurrier years where you got one or two guys to play a spot, and then beyond that, there's a ton of question marks. Like, there are talented individuals behind him. So if he goes out and performs well early, then I think then he solidifies him a heavier spot in the rotation. And then, if not, if it just doesn't play out like he wants to, then there's somebody behind him. But I'm expecting good things from it, because if you need someone, and I think it's better to have somebody who's familiar with the defense to be able to set edges and stop the run from that position, because typically you're looking at edge and it's like see ball, get ball, right? See QB, get QB. And that's what you want out of an edge rush. But at the same time, they're not going to throw it every time. And that's what makes it fun. So you're going to have to learn how to stop the run. And Kennard had that ability, and I think his experience lended to that. And I think the same thing is going to happen to Bryan Thomas as we enter 2025, and that his experience and familiarity with Clayton White's scheme is going to be able to elevate his game to where he is going to be, positioned great. And I expect him. I'm hammering the over. I don't know who said it I can't remember who hit the chat box, but as for Cameron, so I'm with you, Cam. You're hammering the over here, man.
Matt says over, may hit that in a couple of non-cons. Jay Frew mentions Derek Moore. Sounds so loud when he's hyped, but so soft-spoken otherwise. Yeah, that's Derek.
Dude, it was, because he was prominently featured in that first episode too.
Really? Well, I'm gonna have to watch it now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. That's your boy Demo, right? Yeah.
I gotta watch that, man. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Michael says, I think the double teams on Dylan will actually open up linebackers and BTJ for sacks. Jay Frew says over by 3, so 7.5 sacks is his call. The Queen of the Cock says, that's my size. He'll let me go walk on. I don't know, maybe best name on the team, easily Demon Clowning. Yeah.
I mean,
Because you got a terrifying last name in Clowney if you're a football player.
yeah.
The Queen says, I'm going over by a good margin with the attention Stewart and Gabriel Brownlow Dindy will get. He should be able to get back there, and he has a quickness to do so. Yep. Billy says, speaking of Clowney, like Jadeveon Clowney, Dylan's going to have a great year like Clowney this year. I mean, Clowney's second year was his best year.
Yeah.
Third, there's some coaching issues.
Mm.
2013, I'll never forget the Georgia game in 2013. There's a lot of drama on the sidelines, right? Carolina lost that game 41-30. A wild, it was the third straight wild game in Athens where every team went up and down the field.
Right.
And so Deke Adams and Kirk Bodkin almost got in a fight on the sidelines.
Jeez.
Because Carolina's defense was just confused and bad. I mean, those guys, Deke Adams was not very good. And then Deke had Clowney drop it into coverage. The Spurs like, what are you doing? We don't want to ever drop it into coverage. He needs to go get the quarterback. And
when I saw that the first time, I'm like, what in the hell is he doing?
Yeah, dude. It was like unbelievable.
I get it. He's a freak athlete, but that's not his skill set, right?
If I'm not mistaken, the stats, Phil, if you find the 2013 Gamecock football stats,
yeah, let me.
I think Kelsey Quarles had 10 sacks that year.
Oh, okay. That might be right.
Because the teams were concerned with Clowney. And Clowney just was. I mean, I hate to bring up the Tennessee game that year that they lost, but that pass Justin Worley threw to Marquez North, that set up the winning field goal. Yeah. Clowney was like a half second from obliterating that guy. And he just got it off,
2014, 13.
13. That was the last of the 11 and 2s and the team that had a shot to play for the national title.
Yeah, that's right. Should have. Sacks. Let's see. 9.5 for Kelsey.
9.5, so almost 10.
Yeah, Quarles 9.5.
So that helped him too. So yeah, you can help that. Sometimes the superstar has less sacks than the other guy.
Yeah, Clowney had 3 that season.
Yeah. Quarles was he was a tackle, not an end, but lining up next to him obviously helped.
Well, that's what I think too. It was like, because this, all right, obviously everybody knows Dylan Stewart, known quantity. Bryan Thomas Jr., here we are, experience,
senior,
familiarity, senior, right? My gut tells me, and I'm still taking the over because I think this will still have an impact on production, but that the defensive tackles are going to end up being more disruptive and productive in the backfield than what people are actually giving them credit for, because of what we're talking about on the edges. And I see that. Yeah, like Nick Barrett, those guys are going to have time to eat because they're not going to have as much resistance.
Well, that was another thing that was big last year with TJ Sanders. I mean, he was kind of almost impossible to block one-on-one.
Yeah.
So, but then you had to worry about the ends and stuff last year. It's going to be different on the inside, but that doesn't mean it can't be good. Yeah. I think guys like, you mentioned Nick Barrett, Monkel Goodwine, and Gabriel Brownlow Dindy in theory should be fine on the interior. Mark actually mentions a senior riser on offense, Xavier Legette. How could I forget about that?
Right,
dude?
That's right.
My bad on that. So Michael says in this deep. The Queen says Desmond Umazulu. I've learned how to pronounce that recently.
That's right.
Is his breakout D lineman. He's going to have a year where he's making, based on, practice intel. In theory, he should have a year where he makes more plays. Dez was always going to take a little bit, like I've said, as far as development goes. So Steven says he's been on the wrong YouTube account for the last 2 months, where I was not a member of the Big Club Chief. By accident, I switched to this YouTube account where I've been a member the last 2 years.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Saheem says when you rewatch the LSU game, there were 3 pick sixes called back. There were 2 at least. Was there a third? pick six? Maybe so.
I
I know
remember
O'Donnell
the
Fortune
first
had
one.
one early, and that was called back. And then I know that, and that was a penalty. Then that was on Kennard too, wasn't it? Yeah,
Oh, I think it was.
it was.
Yeah, but now that was legit.
That was legit.
Yeah, that one was legit, I feel, but that
Yeah, the
most
refs
egregious
were
one there
yeah.
with even Worry was the worst.
Tyler says if BTJ has 7.5 sacks, his team will have a real shot at being in the college football playoff. And Ben says BTJ and JT Gear have a chance at over 5. He says they're deeper on the edge than we get credit for. Yeah. And you know what's interesting about it? You know, we talked about the Spurrier years and how that those teams didn't really compare with these teams as far as depth goes. But I was thinking about this too as kind of a counter for that, because you know, people remember those teams for winning the division and winning 11 games and things like that, Phil. But those teams also so every year they were competing to win the division and get to Atlanta. You know, during that time frame, although in 2012, Georgia and Florida both were 11-1. I mean, they both had good years that year. But during that time frame, you're just basically trying to win the East. So you got to beat Missouri and the teams you play every year that Spurrier was used. You know, Carolina didn't really have to go. I mean, they played Alabama the one time in 2010.
Yeah.
Through that 4-year stretch. They weren't super duper against LSU. They lost in 11 to Arkansas. They could not beat Auburn to save their life. So I think that you could maybe get by with that against this schedule a little bit more than maybe you could now, where you're in one 16-team freaking division. You have no margin for error. You know, even if you go 10-2, you may not even make it to Atlanta, which Carolina did 3 years in a row under Spurrier. But and oh, by the way, you know, you cannot, nobody's except Texas is avoiding some of the better quote unquote teams in the SEC. The difference too, though, is in those days, you know, Alabama was elite every single year. And then you'd have an LSU jump up. You'd have an Auburn jump up, mostly from the West. You know, Georgia under Mark Richt was not Georgia under Kirby Smart.
No.
You know, Florida had a good year with Muschamp, and McElwain, Swamp Donkey somehow won back-to-back division titles. But it was, you were just gearing up for a different type of season. Even Clemson was not as good. You know, Clemson was on the rise.
Right.
You know, to kind of, you know, I watched the 2013 Clemson Carolina game and thought a lot of their players on the D-line on the defense were getting better. They kept recruiting well. I didn't see them winning a national championship in 3 years.
JC and Mad Dog Mully on the Gamecock Show.